Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Medical School Alumni Association, I would like to welcome you to tonight's symposium, Driving Innovation to Market. Tonight I have the pleasure of representing the Medical Alumni Association, or M.A.A. Board of Directors, and facilitating this symposium. My name is Raphael Darvish, and I am an M.D. M.B.A. who graduated UCLA in 2004. I truly believe in the importance of healthcare professionals being business savvy, and I'm excited to hear what our speakers have to say tonight. During fiscal year 2008-2009, the UCLA Office of Intellectual Property and Industry-Sponsored Research reported 260 inventions at the School of Medicine and received a licensing income of $21 million. There will be 4 speakers this evening, and after they have given their individual presentations, there will be time for a question and answer session. Please hold your questions until the Q&A. Our first presenter is from the private sector. Jonathan Jake is a patent attorney at Connolly, Bove, Lodge & Hutts. As counsel in his firm's intellectual property group, Mr. Jake helps inventors protect their valuable new technology by applying his considerable experience in getting and protecting patents. He also participates in patent litigation matters and is a member of the Los Angeles Intellectual Property Law Association. Since becoming a patent attorney in 1997, he has worked on patent applications and litigation in a variety of mechanical, electrical, manufacturing, and computer science disciplines, most extensively in the area of software and network technology. He completed his law degree at UC Hastings and his mechanical engineering degree from UC Berkeley. Mr. Jake will give an overview of intellectual property, patents, and the patenting process. Please help me welcome Mr. Jake.
Is that good? Thank you for that introduction. Bear with me for a bit while I get the PowerPoint rolling here. Oops. Here we are. For the past 13 years, I've been working sort of in the trenches of the patent world, prosecuting patents, trying to get patents allowed and issued and enforced for my clients. This gives me a perspective, I think, that's very focused on the practicalities of how do you get a patent and what makes a successful patent application. So I'm going to try to share that with you as sort of an introduction to what the other speakers are going to be covering. I'm always very willing to speak to members of the public that have general questions about patenting, so feel free to contact me if you have any questions. You can always find me easily just by Googling my first and last name, since I have an unusual last name. The patent and copyright laws go back to the U.S. Constitution to promote the progress of science and the useful arts. It's a power granted to Congress. Now there's basically 3 pillars of federal intellectual property law: copyright, patent, and trademark. I'm just going to go through these quickly just as general background. Copyright, of course, pertains to books and movies and things of that sort. Trademark is a source identifier. And patent really is what we're here for tonight. I just mentioned the others because people do confuse these different areas of intellectual property law. They're both similar in that they grant an exclusive right to the holder. They both pertain to an intangible right. But the subject matter is very different between the 3. The way in which you go about obtaining the rights is very different. And the value is very different. Now, patents really cover, in one sense, an idea. As long as it's an idea for a new and useful process, machine, manufacture, composition of matter, or any improvement thereof. Now, the exact scope of what that includes has changed over the years. It grows and shrinks. It's different slightly in different countries. But for the most part, what you do in the medical profession is pretty squarely within that. There's some controversy in some areas, but we won't be discussing that tonight. But what is a patent right? Well, it's an exclusive right for a limited time, 20 years from the date of filing, to prevent others from making, using, selling, offering for sale, or importing what you have described in your patent claims. It can be enforced only by bringing suit in a federal court or for imports in the U.S. International Trade Commission. So it's not, you can't ask your local policeman or your local state judge to enforce these rights. There's only one way to enforce them. And it's in the nature of a property right that can be transferred like any other property right. It's held by the inventor initially in the U.S. unless it's assigned to another entity. So what are the conditions and requirements? Well, you've got to pay the fees and comply with the administrative procedures. Of course, you've got to have the scope of your invention described in a single independent sentence called a claim that has definite meaning. That scope of that claim can't encompass anything that's old or obvious. And you have to have the full scope of the claim disclosed and enabled by the accompanying written disclosure of your application. So claims are really what the patent process revolves around. And they're in a very formalistic structure. What you see there is an example of an independent claim, which is a combination of two elements. So it defines the two elements and the relationship of them. And then in addition to that, you can have a number of dependent claims, which are narrower than the independent claim because they include all the limitations of the independent and then add an additional limitation. So you can see how the scope of the claim can narrow down as you add additional limitations. So the process, and bear with me a bit, this graphic is a little slow to come up. Well, this resembles a chart that we may be familiar with, but it's not before 401k. This is a chart of the allowance rate of USPTO from 1975 through 2008. You can see a dramatic change beginning around the year 2000. There's a gradual drop-off, which just continues pretty much year by year. So going from a high of just over 70% allowance down at the end of 2008, 44.2%. Well, it's not easy to get a patent these days. It's tougher than it used to be. There's other reasons why that trend went down. But I think if you talk to patent practitioners who are out there trying to get patents allowed, they will tell you, yes, it has gotten harder. And one of the reasons it's gotten harder is because of the obviousness bar. You can't claim something that's obvious. It's the #1 reason why patent applications are abandoned. And there's no bright line test for obviousness. What we have is a selection of multi-factor tests that are applied, so it's pretty squishy. It's very difficult to take a new idea or innovation to a patent attorney or anyone experienced in patent law and say, can I get a patent on this? The best they're going to be able to tell you is, well, maybe, even if they're fully informed as to the prior art. The recent court cases, and I'm thinking mainly of the Supreme Court case of KSR versus Teleflex, that have made it more difficult to overcome initial obviousness determinations in the PTO. And the culture of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, in my opinion, and I think others will join me, it favors rejection of applications over allowance. It's not really a balance there. I'll just skip through this pretty quickly. This is one of the touchstone Supreme Court cases in determining obviousness. There's questions of fact underlying a determination of obviousness. And this seems pretty self-evident, but it's good to be aware of. You need to know the scope and the content of the prior art to make